luckily, like, in this basement, out of all of where I live, there's only 2 windows.
Oh.
So I have this big window here behind us, and then there's the one, tiny little basement window in the basement.
Yeah.
So there's a...
I couldn't live in a basement again.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a lack of light, but it works out better this way, me being down. Also, the basement room kind of sucks, so...
You don't want to rent it out to people?
Yeah, I was like, I figure better me living in the sucky part of the house than somebody else.
I mean, if I owned a house, I'd be like, nah, I get the nice stuff.
Yeah.
If someone wants to rent from me, they get the crap.
I also figured that it would, if I put somebody in the basement, it would attract a certain type of renter versus if I let somebody have the upper floor.
That's fair.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair.
I was like, I feel like if I rent out the top floor, then I might get somebody who's a little bit more respectable in here.
That's possible. Because Lord knows Tori and I are not respectable people when we live in a basement.
I just figured I was more likely to get, like, some 18-year-old or something who's like,
I just need a place to live wherever. I don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who'll have people over all the time and be loud, and I'm over that. I'm 29 now.
Old. Man, I was over that when I was like 22.
Yeah, I
living
know.
with an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're the worst.
It's so funny. You don't think it's like that long ago, but then you realize, like, yeah, I was an entirely different person when I was 18.
Yeah, I think I was chatting with someone about that the other day. It's like, I think that there's really something significant. Like, there's a significant age gap between, like, early 20s and late 20s. Like, honestly. Because, like, early 20s, a lot of people are, like, still in post-secondary or, like, traveling and, like, still dating and stuff like that. And a lot of people, by the time they're, like, in their late 20s are, like, settling down and, like, getting houses and in careers and stuff. And it's, like, such... Like, you think, like, oh, the teens to 20s is so significant. I'm like, I don't know. I think almost more significant is, like, early teens to late 20s or even mid-20s.
I think, like, it comes to, like, I think, like, 4 or 5 year chunks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So from, like, 18 to, like, 23 is kind of similar. And then, like, 23 to 28, kind of similar. But once you start hitting, like, kind of that later period, like, I don't know, you have more of an idea of what life is.
Yeah.
You have kind of a better idea of what you want to do with your life, what direction you want to take it and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I agree. Like, mid-20s even, it was kind of weird, but it's like a transition period. You're, like, still kind of partying all the time, but, like, also you're starting to get sick of it.
Like, I gotta have responsibilities. And, like, I have to be up early.
Yeah.
And I feel like crap after morning.
Yeah. That was the biggest thing that kind of... When I got, like, an actual big boy job, like an adult job, where I had to be responsible at work. I wasn't just some, like, random worker who could show up, like, super hungover and still do my job.
Guy in charge.
There's actually, like, responsibility to my job now that would be really hard to do hungover. And I mean, like, you're a teacher, so I'm sure you can't just, like, show hungover.
Probably be frowned upon.
Is there teachers who just show up super hungover?
I think there have been instances where teachers are like, oh damn, like, I drank way more than I thought I would on, like, a Thursday night or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm very hungover.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the time that's what, like, personal days are for. Where you're like, oh, I was saving this up to, like, go on vacation or, like, do something fun, but I guess I'll just be hungover at home instead.
That's when you know you fucked up. When you have to take a personal day because you're hungover.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, though. Like, I do the same thing. Sometimes I'm like, I drank a little bit more than I meant to. I mean, teachers are just people, so...
Yeah.
And, like, teachers are people who are younger than me, even. For example, like, you are younger than me, and you are a teacher, so...
Yep. We are expected to be superhuman. Perfect, flawless beings.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason I never want to live in Airdrie. Because I don't want to run into my kids when I'm, like, wandering around, like, my weekend hippie self, where I'm like, I don't wear a bra on the weekends. I dress like a total slob. Like, not a slob, but, like, definitely not school appropriate stuff. Where I'm like, oh, this is not appropriate for school.
That's fair.
So.
Do you ever get, like, with social media and stuff, do your kids try and, like, follow you?
Oh, yeah, all the freaking time.
Really?
Holy crap. Yeah, the minute they find out that I have, like, Snapchat or Instagram, they're like, oh, we're going to find you. And then they do. And I'm like, well, I'm not letting you follow me. He's like, I have high privacy on my Instagram and my Facebook, and I don't let anyone follow me or see me if I don't want them to.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I don't want... like, no, that's like still part of my personal life.
Yeah.
Stop being...
That's weird.
But it was funny because back quite a few months ago, actually, I was showing my students a picture of my brother because they're like, I was talking about him and they're like, what's your brother like? I'm like, well, he's like a boy. He looks like a boy version of me. Like, we look very much alike. He's got thicker eyebrows, but he's like a boy version of me.
Yeah.
And they're like, we can't picture that. That's hard to picture. So I was like, okay, I'll show you a picture of him at the end of class. And so I was showing them a picture, and I didn't have any on my phone because I deleted them all because it's dumb. But and I showed them a picture of him on Instagram, and they're like, oh, we know what his Instagram is now. I'm like, oh damn, I did not think that one through. So then he's getting all these friend requests and like private message requests from these like 14-year-old kids who are like, hey, we're Miss Power's students. Can we follow? Like, let me follow you, man. And then they're like bombarding him, asking him where our wedding was. Like, where's Madame Power getting married? And he's like, he's lying. He's like, Edmonton, Jamaica. Like, he's just saying like
just random
BS
spots.
answers. And then they found Tori through that because they're like, oh well, we know Tori's name is Tori, so we're gonna go find him in your brother's friend list. I'm like, you're gonna go through my brother's friend list, which I don't even know how many friends he has, and find the one that's Tori. And sure enough, like 3 of them found Tori, and he actually came to one of their soccer games because we were going out for dinner right after. He was going out for drinks with the coaches, and the kid walks up and is like, hey, Tori719, because that's his Instagram handle, and he's like, what the hell? I'm like, yeah, grade 9s are such weirdos.
They're such creepers.
They're so creepy. I tell them that too. I'm like, you know how creepy this is? You're just like finding me and people you don't even know on Instagram and being like, let us follow. Like, you're being creepy.
Yeah.
Stop being creepy.
Yeah, it's different if you just like happen upon something and you're like, oh, okay, follow that person. But when you're like searching out somebody in your personal life so that you can get pictures of somebody else who doesn't want to follow you, that's called stalking almost.
Yes, and they did something even creepier with one of the he was a science teacher covering for one of our other science teachers because she was on like medical leave.
Yeah.
And they had to do a project for him, and they're like, oh hey, Madame Power, like check out the project we made for him. And I'm looking, and on the back page they have a picture of him from like years ago. I'm like, where did you guys get this picture of your teacher? And like, we found it on Facebook. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, yeah, we went on Facebook and then we searched him up and then we found him and then like went into his pictures and found a picture of him from university and then put it in. I'm like, you guys are creepy. Stop being creepy. Like, you're being stalkers, and I don't think you realize how freaking creepy it is. Well, God, you're so weird.
I feel like probably because they've grown up with it, that it's just normal for them.
Yeah, it is. They're like, oh, if I want to find out something about someone, I just find their social media accounts and learn what I can about them.
Yeah. Like, it's like kind of our fault for putting all that stuff on social media, you know what I mean? But
yeah, and it's tricky too, because like so many parents, like we're at that age where like us, like our people as parents, we're gonna know about social media and stuff to look out for. But like the parents of these kids coming up right now is kind of like Gen X, I guess, Gen Z, that's coming up. They're for the most part pretty cognizant, but like there's so much still happening that they don't know kind of what to warn their kids about and like to what to help their kids with, and it's so weird, and I think I'm very interested to see how teaching goes, like all the hidden curriculum goes in the next few years. Because hidden curriculum is just as important as like real curriculum. It's essentially like just the background skills and knowledge that you give. So training kids to not be freaking stalkers as hidden curriculum, because like it's not written anywhere like, hey, teach your kids to not be freaking creepy. But at the same time, I'm like, it's my responsibility as a teacher seeing them being creepy to be like, hey guys, stop it. Stop being creeps.
Yeah, because like we came to the social media game a little late. Like, well, at least me in my generation, it was high school, you know?
Yeah, no, and same with,
Like, we had inklings of it in junior high with, like, MySpace and, like, Nexopia and shit like that.
Yeah.
But really, when everybody got on social media, it was, like, high school that happened.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, because Snapchat came out when I was in grade, like, 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And I remember it was... And it's changed so much since then as well. Because, like, it originally was... Those photos were... Like... very temporary. And you couldn't set the timer on how long the photo was up for. Or you could, but now they're just permanent. Like, you can have the photo up until you tap it.
Until you tap it, yeah.
And it's so weird how, stuff just adapts and changes. And, yeah.
It's even just like when you look at Facebook and how Facebook has changed. Like, Facebook used to just be people making statuses. It was kind of like Twitter, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People just like tell you what they're doing. They're like, oh man, I'm stoked for this. And you're like trying to project your life onto the internet.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I don't want to project my life onto the internet. Like, I just... Facebook, nobody really makes statuses anymore that are like, you know, your typical kind of...
Yeah. Like, I really love when, like, on this day and your memories pop up.
Yeah.
Because I got Facebook when I was in high school, I'm pretty sure, like, really late junior high.
Yeah.
Grade 8 or 9, I think. And, so it's really funny. It's like, oh, on this day, like, 10 years ago... And it'll be the most obscure thing, like, I had such a good time with you, like, such a good time tonight, you know who you are, and, like, they're the most, like, secretive, not passive-aggressive, because that sounds weird, some of them were, some of them totally were.
Some of them are totally like, passive-aggressive.
I'll never trust you again, and you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a bad diary.
Yeah,
Actually, no, it's a bad diary just as bad as my actual diary was. I found that. I was cleaning up our office and found my diary from grades 5 to beginning of grade 12, and I read it, and I was just, like, crying. Like, oh my god.
You're probably like the stuff that I thought was important back then.
Yes! Well, it was so... A lot of it, too, was just, like... They're like, the ones when I was younger were hilarious because it was always me writing about how my brother's ruining my life, but I couldn't spell, like, ruining was spelled so janky. It was like Rouening. It's like ruining. All my diary entries from junior high and stuff were the most, like, vapid, just airy, artsy fart, like, just nothing of content.
Yeah.
And then when I was in high school, it was like I was trying to be this like deep philosophical, and one entry in particular was hysterical because it's going on about how, like, these people are so judgmental, and, like, I want to tell them to stop being judgmental because your life will be so much better if you don't judge other people. And then in a paragraph above that, I was talking about how, like, oh, this girl's such a slut, blah 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 blah. And it's like, what? How did I think that was any sort, like, what?
Yeah, you can't see it.
No, and so it's really funny, and I was actually telling my friend about that. She's like, oh man, when kids or adults read things as from, like, their childhood, because apparently it's like a thing. She's like, when it comes to town, you'll have to take your diary there and read it. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, it's like,
yes, please. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, it's like adults read things they wrote as kids or something like that.
Yeah, and I would love to. Like, here are some select passages from my high school diary.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I mean, most of my memories on Facebook is just like song lyrics. You know, you post random song lyrics and you're like, this is exactly how I'm feeling right now.
This is representative of my soul.
Also, you're like, I'm trying to be edgy, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, totally.
You're also basically just being like, hey, look at this. I like this cool band.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Just like, I can remember all those things like subtly going through my mind, but still like posting it anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just
absolutely.
Yeah. I recently found a story that I wrote from like junior high.
Nice.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So great.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, this is New York Times bestseller quality material.
Oh man, that was and like you could tell like there's so many things in it where I'm just going like because I'm like clearly trying to extend the like length of it because I think it needed to be 2 pages. So there's like a line of just args and stuff, and that's done like 4 times, and I'm like,
oh my gosh, this is a very onomatopoeic story.
Yeah.
Lots of sound, and I have to describe it at length.
Yeah, it was interesting to read.
It's funny,
to say the least.
I love finding stuff like that. My mom recently gave me the first the first novel I ever started.
Yeah.
From when I was 12 years old, and I am so stoked to sit down and read it because if I remember, and I'm probably remembering this as even better than it was, but it was bad. Like, it was such garbage because I started writing it and I didn't really realize the whole idea of like plots, and that, you know, books have a storyline, and normally they like, oh, introduction, like rising action, climax, falling action, and so I'm pretty sure it's just constant rising action, and there's no end game for it. It was just like, I'm writing a story and it has no it's like just a plateau. I was like, oh, this thing happened and now we're plateaued.
Yeah.
And there's no end game. There's no climax for it. It was just like, yep. Just gonna keep introducing characters and keep having things happen, but they're not like all that exciting. They're just stuff
is happening, and it keeps going up, and then it's resolved, and
So I super want to read that just so I can weep at how poorly I wrote as a child.
That reminds me of the scene in How I Met Your Mother where they're like going out for New Year's and Barney brings a mix CD and he's like, some people think a good mix CD should be a combination of rise and fall, but I think a good mix CD should be all rise, and he plays it and then Shot Through the Heart comes on.
Yep, that was this, except it was not all rise, it was all like fall. Like, it was all medium excitement action.
All just subpar action.
Yep. Like, there was... You could tell in the writing, like, there's no direction for it. Oh, man, it's so good.
So when you do write, do you plot stuff out? Do you kind of know,
Oh, yeah.
Do you have, like, a beginning and an end in mind, and you kind of plot out events in between, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so more often than not, that is exactly what I do. And it's... Yeah, my writing development has changed so much in like, I generally still follow the same kind of thing. I always use my mountain diagram, and there are so many just like mountain diagrams tucked into places. And I was like, oh, I just thought of a really cool thing for a plot. And like, oh, this is the climax, and this is the falling action, and this is the rising action, this is the introduction. I'll have like just 3 things.
Yeah.
Like intro, climax, whatever. And sometimes it'll start like I'll know the end, and sometimes I'll know the beginning, middle, and end. Sometimes I'll like have a middle and like, what would happen if this is the main big climactic moment of something. I don't know what the story is yet, but like this is the climax of it. And it's like a weird fill in the blank puzzle sometimes, and a lot of the time I'll have ideas for stuff and I'll just write it down and then leave it for some other time, because I'll have a character, I'll have a setting, or I'll have a specific scene in mind that I want to write, but I don't just want to write the scene, I want it to be part of like a cohesive thing, entity. So yeah, it more often than not though, I'll sit down, draw out my mountain diagram, and add in like my steps, especially if it's something that I am going to be writing as like a full story, and I know that, like when I was writing Kingdom Come, I did that, and when I'm writing Distant Kingdoms, the sequel, it's very much following that same process where I'm like, I got my mountain diagram, and it's tricky because like I know I'm working on the introduction right now and I'm so lost in it. I know like what is the kickoff action to get the rest of the story going. But getting to that point, I'm like, I don't know. So it's been a lot of writing a chapter, deleting a chapter, rewriting a chapter, deleting a chapter, and it's tricky.
Do you write it in order? So do you like start with the introduction, you go from A to B, or do you just write a bunch of stuff and then you kind of organize it as you go?
I wish I was like boppling around enough to be able to organize like that, but I have to write it chronologically.
Yeah.
There are times, like, I find that sometimes I'll go in and edit stuff where I take stuff out that I'm like, oh, I don't need this, and like, I didn't need that. But I don't. I write it chapter by chapter, like one at a time, what comes next kind of sequence of events.
Yeah.
There have been instances where I'm like, oh man, like I really want to skip ahead like 2 chapters because I know what's going to happen in 2 chapters.
Yeah.
There's something going on right now, like they're here, they need to get to this like point B. Something's going to happen in between, but I really want to get that point B scene started. And so sometimes I will jump ahead and then fill in the blank between, but I rarely do that. That's normally if I'm like, I am at a writer's block for where I am right now, but I know it comes on in a few pages and a few chapters, and I'll get started on that and go forward.
Yeah. Okay. Like, and sometimes I feel like you just have to like capture those ideas as they happen.
Yeah.
Because you always think that like you're gonna remember things. You're like, man, this is such a great idea. How could I forget this?
It sucks for me. The places I get my best ideas, at least to me, they like where I'm like, oh, I've been stuck for this for so long, and then I'm trying to get through it, and then the moments that I'll be like, oh, I know what I'm gonna do next, will be in the shower.
Yeah.
In bed when I'm trying to sleep, or when I'm in the car.
Yeah.
So I always have like notepads on my bedside table, and it annoys Tori because like I don't turn on the light, but then I'm just fumbling around in the dark trying to find like a pen and a notepad. So I have like a notepad that just has these really big words that are like really kind of hard to read because I've written them in the pitch black, and I'm not entirely sure where the paper is. So they're like middle of the page. Some of the words are like overlapped and written over top of each other. So I'm like, okay, I think that line ended here. I'll write down below. Sometimes it'll be like a word at the top, and I've taken up the entire page with it because I have no idea how big it is. And then just have like 5 words, just one after the other, just down the page, just written like massive, like a 3-year-old wrote it, and it's super funny. And I've started keeping little notebooks on me at all times. I also have pens in my cars, and there was a point where I had something pop into my brain. I'm like, I need to remember this, and I had a pen in my cup holder, and I was driving, and I wrote on my leg. I wasn't even looking, so it was just like this scribble in blue ink that like I could just barely decipher, but it was almost like just the action of writing it down, even if I couldn't make it exactly what the words were.
Yeah.
Remembering, I was like, oh, okay, I remember what I wrote, so I'll write it down for real now, not on my thigh.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. Like, honestly, the action of just writing something down, like, solidifies it in my memory that I don't even have to, like, actually look at what I wrote down anymore.
Yeah.
But if I don't write it down, then it, like, will just completely go away.
Yeah. I try to tell my students that all the time.
Yeah. Even just, like, you don't even have to look at it. Just, honestly, if you just write it down, just even somewhere, just on a piece of paper, like, it really helps for some reason.
Yeah, but...
Yeah.
Kickback for that. The students. I'm like,
Well, yeah, students are. I was like agendas when like every year we got an agenda, and like every teacher would be different about the agenda. Some were like, okay, no, you use your agenda, blah, I'm gonna check it and stuff, and then others were like, you're kind of adult, do what you want, like even though you're not adult at all. But yeah, I was terrible at using agendas. For the first time in my life, I'm actually using a calendar to keep my life organized.
Nice. How's that working?
It's all right.
Yeah.
I have stuff like because like on Google Calendars, you can like add goals they are. So you can be like, I want to read for 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And you can like put that in and then set it be like every day around this time, read for 15 minutes. And you can like check it off and you're like, you get a little dopamine bump from being like, I checked something off my list. Hooray.
Totally. I'm so bad for keeping calendars. And it's funny because like I'm a teacher, so I should be like good at it. And I find that it's because of teaching. I'm like I'm super dedicated to using my calendar and like checking off my lists and doing all this for the first like 3.5 months that I have a calendar or planner or whatever. And then the last like half month I'm just like, and this is not like, it's just completely useless because everything is hell. Normally it's exam week, exam breaks during those times anyways, so normally life is hell anyways, so I'm just like, we're just gonna finish stuff. I don't even know, I'm not gonna write it down, we're just gonna finish stuff up. It's gonna be great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, I think it's a sign of maturity.
Being able to use a calendar.
Yeah,
I'll just remember stuff.
Also, your life just gets so busy. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like I'm doing more things, but for some reason, like, things keep getting filled in, and I'm like, why don't I have any time?
Yeah, and I have a bad knack for being like, I have so much time, and then I look at it, I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I really don't. I'll be like, yeah, I've got so much time to, like, go for drinks with someone, or I'm starting a D&D with some friends of ours, and like there's dance and writing and school and everything in between all of them. Like, yeah, I've got time, but then I forget that no, like those take up a lot of my life hours, and Tori would point out that that's because I don't fully understand how time works, which is admittedly very true. I'm really bad at time. There and I still struggle with it sometimes, where if I know I need to be somewhere at a certain time, I grossly underestimate how long it's going to take me to get there. Even with like Google Maps, I'll be like, hey, how long is it going to take me to get from point A to point B? I'll be like, 15 minutes. I'm like, I'll leave 15 minutes before I have to be there. Yeah. And Tori's just sitting there being like, you're the stupidest person. You need to leave like 25 minutes because knowing you're going to start getting ready to go, and then you're like, oh, I forgot to like put on deodorant or like wash my hair or something. And he's like, so no, you have to leave way earlier than that is. And even when I was in university, it was worse, where I kind of thought that if I had to be somewhere by a certain time, I had to leave at that time. Like, I did not. Time is I hate time. Time throws me off. I don't get how it works a good 90% of the time.
Honestly, like, what I assume is I just assume in this city it's just going to take me half an hour to get anywhere.
That's fair.
So I'm just like, it'll take me half an hour, and then I just leave with half an hour in mind usually, and I'm usually pretty good about it.
Yeah.
So, unless it takes longer than half an hour, then I'm usually late, but...
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah, I'm adamant about the half-hour rule.
If it takes less, I'll be there early. If it takes more, I'll be there, well, probably a little bit late.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah. I'm either, like, early, right on time, or late, which is, I guess, the only options that you can be anyway, so...
It's like Tori gets super annoyed at me when we're late somewhere, and I'm bad because like, I don't like being late if it affects other people. If I'm going to be late to, like... party, like, I don't care.
Yeah,
it's a party. Like, there's certain things that I have less issues being late to, but like we went on a hike the other day and I was so dumb, and we were supposed to meet at 9:15, and somehow I got that we were meeting at 10. So at 9:30 I get a call from the girl we're meeting up with to go hiking with. She's like, are you guys still coming? I'm like, yeah, we're like just about to leave. She's like, oh, you were supposed to be here 15 minutes ago. I'm like, what? We were supposed to be there at 10. She's like, no, at 9:15. Like, oh, well, we'll be there in like 25 minutes.
Yeah, so be there at 10.
It's a 25-minute drive for us, and we're going to leave now.
Yeah.
And I felt like such a dank, and like I'm driving, and Tori's like, it's fine, we'll get there when we get there. And like he's he was annoyed with me and then realized I was really upset with myself. And he's like, it's fine. And I was like, I hate putting other people on the line. I hate people waiting for me. But so if people aren't waiting on me, I'm like, I'll show up whenever.
No, it doesn't matter when you show up to a party.
Yeah.
It's like, I have a rule. If you're like 10 minutes late, you're not really late. That's just like margin of error, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, who really cares? Like even 15 minutes, it's like that's margin of error.
Yeah.
Traffic, getting anywhere in the city can be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
It's really once you get into like the half hour range where you're like,
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's totally fair.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the nice thing about living in northeast Calgary and then working in Airdrie is it's honestly only half an hour to get there, which is crazy because like anyone working anywhere else in the city would be like, yeah, during rush hour it would take like 45 minutes. I'm like, yep, don't have to deal with that. It's very nice.
Yeah, because my friend lives in Airdrie, Brendan.
Yeah.
So sometimes we go and meet him after work there.
Yeah.
And I drive to Airdrie from all the way down here because my work
God.
is just in the... So I pretty much take Deerfoot from one end, like from South Barlow to all the way to Airdrie.
Yeah.
And every time I make that drive after work in rush hour, I'm like, I would kill myself if I have to do this every day.
I would almost take Stony at that point.
I've tried Stony too. It's like a bit better.
Yeah.
Like it's just because it takes about the same amount of time, but you feel like you're moving and making more progress for longer at least before it gets to like bumper to bumper traffic.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's just, man, I just could not deal with that every day. I would go insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's totally fair. That's again like the awesome part about where we live is we're just past all we're moving against traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So because everyone's heading into downtown for the most part and we're heading like out of the city, so we're moving against traffic and it works out so well.
Yeah.
So like yeah, that's really the crappy part of finding a house is finding a place that has as good of a commute.
Yeah.
But still is like nice and central to everything because I really do like where we live right now.
Yeah. It's nice being closer to downtown.
Yeah, well, I go do events downtown go to events and go do things, and my best friend lives downtown, and if I ever do need to catch like an Uber and stuff, it's like $15.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's like nothing.
Yeah.
So that was awesome.
Yeah. Even to get down by where I live now, it's like $25 to $30, which is better than it was when there was only taxis, because it was usually $40 to $50. But
yeah.
I mean, now I don't think I've ever taken the train more since I've had a car than I have this year, just like going downtown and stuff. Because like I don't like driving downtown because just trying to park, and I get so many parking tickets downtown because I just have like an aversion to paying for parking.
You should get the app. I live for the parking app.
I should, but like I said, I have this aversion to paying for parking. I always try and like find free parking, or I'll risk it. I'll like park somewhere. I'll be like, I'll risk it.
Yeah, I would. If you're gonna risk it, you should park in not city parking lot, like private stuff, because they have no legal.
Yeah.
They have no legal authority.
Yeah, it's awesome. I've done that before.
Yeah.
And I got a ticket. I was like, I'm not paying this. And they're like, you should pay this. I'm like, no.
That's like I got my first one at our dance studio. The parking lot right next to it. It sucks because like there is a parking lot behind the dance studio. There are 6 stalls.
Oh.
And it's also like a bridal boutique.
Yeah.
So more often, like there's generally like a couple cars already there. And then there's this whole lot right next to it that's just like fully open, but it's a privately owned parking lot. And also the signage for it is super stupid because there's like 2 spots that say public parking, please pay at meter. And then all the other ones are like reserved parking from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then public parking after 6 p.m. and on weekends or whatever. And so you're like, oh cool, public parking. It doesn't say anything about like please pay a meter or whatever. So no one was paying for the longest time. And then a bunch of people started getting so many tickets. And it's normally like after 6 as well, because dance classes are normally, the earliest ones are at 5:30. But normally there's people coming in for like the 6:30 or 7:30 or 8:30 classes, and they're getting tickets. And they're like $80, and you're like, what the hell? And so I was looking up online. I was like, they have no legal authority. Even if they do tow your car, you just call the police on them, which I think is hilarious. So it's like, God,
it's great. Even if they send you to collections, most of the time they'll send you to like a collection agency that sounds official, but it's just an offshoot of like their company.
Exactly. And then like there's no like
it doesn't affect your credit at all.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
All they have is your license plate. Yeah. They don't have your name, they don't have your address, they don't have anything to do with your banking.
Yeah.
And so I always look at it that way because people just panic and they're like, oh my god, like I have to pay the ticket. I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah. My first like indicator that it was bullshit, it was like initially the ticket was $80 and I was like, there's no way a parking ticket would be $80 off the bat.
Yeah.
And then it was like pay in 7 days or it goes up to $150. I was like, fuck that noise.
Yeah. Like, get out of here.
Yeah. There's no parking tickets that would do that, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like,
absolutely.
I did the same thing. I Googled it. I was like, do I have to pay this? And like, most of the answers are like, no, don't pay this. This is a scam. And you're like, oh, sweet.
It's like the most legal scam.
Yeah.
But it's still such trash. And I hate it.
Yeah.
This is when I go on my like anti-capitalism rant. Like you can't just own cement and charge people to leave their damn cars on it. You don't provide any sort of... Tori argued with me, like, they do provide a service, the parking service. I'm like, but they don't.
They provide you a place to park your car.
And I'm like, that's not, there's no...
Honestly, if they wanted to enforce it better, they would have an employee there instead of just a computer. But like, and then if there was an employee there with a gate that went up and down, and you were like, if you want to park your car here, you pay this man, and then you park your car here. That would work.
Arguably much more a service.
Yeah, that's a system that works too.
Yes.
Like, you cannot park unless you pay. But on these ones, you're like, I'm just not going to pay because there's nobody watching. There's obviously somebody going around to see if you paid, but that's it. Like, that's...
Like, well, you're the fool who got employed by these people because, no one's going to pay.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, instead of having that guy walk around and check to see who's paid... Just put that guy in a booth with an arm, and people will pay, or else they won't park. Like,
it's just...
The system is flawed. The parking system is flawed.
Yep. Yeah, I will always pay for city parking, but apart from that, I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
I refuse.
Also, I've had my car towed before, and it sucks, so...
Really?
Yeah.
From, for city parking, or...?
No, I didn't. Like, my registration was expired, and it was parked on the street.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, so I, got home from work one day, and I was just like, where's my car? It's like, so it's either stolen, or it's been... I thought it was stolen, but it just got towed. So technically, it was stolen. Yeah. Just by...
Legally stolen. It was legally removed from your possession.
Yeah. So that wasn't super fun.
That's... Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a lesson.
Funny in hindsight.
Yeah. It was a lesson.
Yeah, I will frequently have a fear that my car has been stolen from the school, even though I'm right there. Because when Tori and I were carpooling together, if I drove, I'd park it just just outside my window so I could see it all the time. And there'd be days where I totally forgot I didn't drive, and I'd go to look out. I'm like, where the hell's my car? Like, oh, Tori drove me today. Don't have a car. It's at home.
Yeah. It's funny how you can have, memory for some stuff. Like, you can remember stuff from, 8 years ago, whatever, perfectly vividly. But something that literally happened that day, just, gone. If it's, different from the norm, it's just, completely out of your mind.
Oh, I have such bad memory, and, Tori will be the first to point that out. He's like, I have really bad memory, and it sucks because he'll remember and bring up stuff that happened 2-3 years ago, and they were significant things. I'm like, I don't remember this, and it's weird. I just have really, really bad memory, and it sucks because there's so much stuff, and I'm like, oh man, I vaguely remember this thing happening or whatever, but I don't, I can't, visualize it really well. It's this very blurry, obscure memory of something. Just
a mishmash of colors and blobs
and
sounds.
I kind of remember this, but not really.
Yeah, I have a pretty good memory too, but... only for certain things, and sometimes it's the stupidest things. It's why do I remember this very specific detail about this event, but I can't remember the entire event around it?
Yeah.
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 So, I don't know.
I think I'm gonna blame it on I have so much other stuff to remember that I don't remember like memory stuff.
That's fair. I think you only have so much brain space, so the more you keep cramming stuff in there, like other stuff kind of has to fall out and get replaced. It's kind of like a computer hard drive, you know?
Yeah.
Like you need to make
not
room.
Enough storage space.
Yeah, so you got to delete some stuff.
Make room in internal storage.
Yeah. So hopefully
delete some photos.
Yeah. Hopefully because your brain's just doing that automatically. So hopefully it's like deleting the stuff that you really don't need, you know. But sometimes every once in a while, you know, get something that's really important.
Yeah.
So.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm. It is. So for your book and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you kind of draw on events that happen in real life and kind of apply them into a fantasy world, or what's the process for that?
Pretty much, yeah. Like, I think it was with you that I was chatting about a while ago. It was like fantasy novels quite frequently address like political or like social issues. I don't know if it was you now or not, but and like I guess I kind of follow that thematic trope along with my fantasy novels where like the first one is very political religiosity where it's like a very corrupt religious, it's kind of based off of like the older political or religious institutions that were like taking over and being very corrupt and stuff. So I do tend to draw a lot from actual real life things, and maybe not like modern issues, but like issues as a whole or issues from the past. And being a social studies teacher, I love history now. I hated social studies in high school. I thought it was the stupidest. It was one of my worst classes. And now I'm like, oh my god, I wish I paid more attention, because I think it's fascinating. So I do apply some historical stuff into my books. Like I was discussing with Tori how my sequel is drawing on. I was describing it to him. He's like, it sounds very much like you're following a sort of like the like China versus the Mongols in your next book. I'm like, kind of, sort of, yeah, a little bit. Like everything's tweaked a little bit where it's altered ever so slightly, but I do tend to draw on real life stuff, and like a lot of my ethnic groups in my book, or a lot of the lands or a lot of cultural groups are based on mashups of like real life cultural or ethnic groups or religious groups or whatever. So like I think the one of the peoples that I'm introducing in the next book are kind of based, it's a weird mashup on like medieval French and Edo-Japanese sort of deal, where it's like very like hierarchical structures and very fancy and very formal, but like those who are poor are very, very poor and like kind of very strict caste structure and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of drawing from real life stuff, but not just strictly where people are like, well, this is just the French Revolution with different names. Or like, this is just this with different names. Enough that it's like, oh, this is kind of reminiscent of this, but like then you've got this whole thing that happens that has nothing to do with that historical thing. And doesn't make any sort of sense in that historical context, but makes sense in a fantasy context. So
yeah,
I
kind of feel like fantasy novels, they kind of either address the past or the present a lot. Same with like historical fiction. I would call like them in the same kind of category. Then I find like science fiction obviously kind of addresses the future. You can have fantasy, I guess, that addresses the future too, but
well, there's actually one. I don't read a ton of sci-fi, and there's I kind of want to read more. I mainly read just fantasy or urban fantasy. or historical fiction. Those are kind of my like main go-tos. But there was a really, really good sci-fi that I read by a local author named Adam Dries. And it's a fantasy that I actually loved it, and I it's one of those books I'm like, I'm probably going to read it again. Because it wasn't a super complex read where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is taking me forever to get through. But it was great, and it's called The Man on Cloud 9, or The Man of Cloud 9. And it's essentially, like, it's set slightly in the future, and it's about this guy who builds, like, nanobot technology, and it essentially replaces smartphones, where people now have, like, nanobots living in their body, and they get to interact with them and do all this neat stuff the way that we have adapted to use, like, smartphones to make our lives easier. But his nanobot technology, he's always like trying to improve it and do all this stuff, and at one point it's like killing him because he's like just pushing the limits too far. And it was such a good book. Such a good book that was just addressing the theme of like, at what point are like technological advancements too far, and like how far can human ingenuity go before it's like detrimental to ourselves. And it was super good. It was full of like intrigue and stuff like that, because like he's got competitors who are trying to steal his stuff and spy on him and steal his technology or adapt his technology or ruin his technology. And it was super, super good book, and one of the few sci-fis that I've read that I've just been like, oh, like I was super into it from the beginning and stayed into it because
I've actually come to like, I used to mostly exclusively read like, it's pretty much historical fiction and then like nonfiction books. But I've started like branching out a little bit more, and I'm reading a lot more like sci-fi and kind of fantasy and stuff now. But like, the thing about sci-fi is it's always like, it's just, there's this one author that I really like. His name's Kim Stanley Robinson. He wrote this book, and it's called Aurora. But basically what it's about is it's about humans traveling to another star system, basically, to try and set up a world. And they travel in this huge spaceship that's like a biome, you know, so that they can travel through space, because it takes generations to get there. There's none of the original people who left Earth are still alive in the spaceship and stuff. And then they get to the system and they find out that they like have to go home and stuff, and it like tells you about all like the political intrigue and stuff like that. And then there's this part where there's an AI, and the AI is getting smarter throughout the book, and an entire section of the book is just dedicated to the thoughts of this AI. So he's thinking like an AI would, but he's thinking like the AI is super rudimentary at first, and as the section progresses, it thinks it's like gaining more and more consciousness. It's such a good read. But I'm starting to appreciate just all types of books more, because they're just stories, and I find that all stories have some sort of bigger message behind them. They're trying to convey something with this story, you know what I mean? So you kind of have to find, like, what is it, you know? And I just kind of like the fact that stories are even kind of a thing.
That's one thing I miss about university is being forced, quote unquote forced, to read like super complex novels, and then or just anything really, and then be told like what are some like recurring themes, and like where do you find them, and why are they important, and stuff like that. And I remember the most intense version of that we ever did was we got like a page, like just one full page, so double-sided, of text from a novel that we'd read in class, and we had to write a like 5 or 6 page essay on just that section. And it was intense, and it was also really, really cool, because we're looking at symbolism, and like whether or not, and there's always the hilarious arguments like, I'm pretty sure the author just wrote that like tree to be green as like that's a green tree. I'm pretty sure they don't mean to have other symbolism, and it's like sometimes yes, sometimes no. And even if not, I think that like the human mind creates patterns no matter what.
Exactly.
Intentionally or unintentionally. So you can read a book, and whether or not the author meant for the theme of money to have such a significant impact, it still does, right? Or whatever the theme may be. So yeah, we wrote like these really long, complex essays on, essentially 2 pages of text, and it was intense, and everyone came up with like slightly different stuff despite the fact we all had the exact same text to read with. And it was so neat. And yeah, there's certain times I'm like, man, I wish I was back in university and like reading stuff with the intention of writing an essay on it. Like that sounds like the dorkiest thing ever, but I miss writing essays. Like I miss pointing out patterns and things, and finding deeper meaning to stuff, whether it's me just inventing it or it was actually there the whole time. And yeah.
I mean, you could still do that. You could start a blog.
Yeah, so it's funny. Actually, I did. I started a blog just before I got my book published, and I was trying to build a following there. But then I was like, nah, I'm just gonna get it published. This is too much work. So I started like a little bit of a following, and sometimes I still want to write some. Yeah, like just when I'm like, oh man, I want to write something, but like I don't want to write book stuff. I just want to write whatever. So like I've got prompts of stuff, and so I've got stuff I want to do, and yeah, there's essays I want to write, but it's also a lot of work when I'm also teaching full time and trying to write and do that
just
stuff.
General life stuff. Yeah.
We're back to that thing. It's like, how do I not have any time left in my life?
Yeah, I've started like just quickly on the point of the whole symbolism thing, and I think that's very right. Is even if the author doesn't know that they're choosing a color for blinds and they pick blue or whatever, they may not have any deeper meaning behind the curtains being blue, but they have a very significant feel that they are trying to convey. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So even if they're not aware of why they're picking blue, they're still picking blue because they are trying to convey some sort of certain feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, human minds are so good at picking up patterns.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to the thing of having no time. Is I've started what I've started doing recently. I'm only a week into it, really, but I've started waking up at 6 a.m. and I'm writing for like the first hour of my day.
Oh.
So I'm trying to do that every day before work.
Nice.
Just forcing myself to do that. Like I said, I've only done it for a week so far, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But that's what my new routine is currently at.
Yeah. I have no idea how my routine's gonna change. Like, I like getting up earlier and getting stuff done for the day before like my day actually starts.
Yeah.
Because like I start teaching at 9, and when Tori worked in Airdrie too, we carpooled together, and it was awesome because he had to be at work at 7 a.m., which also sucks, but like he had to be at work at 7 a.m. and so I'd get to the school at 7 a.m. and I have 2 hours to get ready for the school day, and that was awesome. It sucked a little bit more when I was doing like soccer, where I was I'm at the school at 7 a.m. and then I stay at the school till like 5:30, 6 o'clock for like soccer practices or soccer games. I'm like, oh man, like this is a long day. But I really liked it. I liked having that time to get stuff done, and I don't like being rushed when it comes to my work. Like I like being able to sit down and get it done, and I still have stuff that I have to do on the weekends, but for me the big part was I like going in early and not having to bring stuff home in the evenings. I would much rather get stuff done in the mornings than have to do it in the evenings. I'm like, evenings are for me. Evenings are for me and Tori. Evenings are for me to go for walks or write or watch Netflix or play video games.
Yeah.
Or just, do my hobbies, do the things I like, because my weekends are also mostly composed of schoolwork, so evenings are like my time.
Yeah.
They are for me.
Yeah. I tried to do stuff in the evening, so I was trying to set aside like some writing time in the evening.
Yeah.
But I just found that like with work and stuff, I could just, and like other stuff going on, like trying to like plan stuff with friends who you never see anymore and stuff, that kind of takes priority over you hanging out and writing by yourself. But I just always found that like something would come up, or like I would just be too exhausted from the day and my brain just isn't working as good as it is right in the morning. So I found by setting that time aside in the morning, I will be able to write at least something, because I know that I can get my brain going a little bit better. It's not like exhausted from the day.
That's totally fair. Maybe I'll have to still get up and get working around 7 a.m. But
I mean, that's just what works for me. You know, like everybody does it differently. Like there are people who prefer to stay up later, and get like they're not morning people. You know, and they work good at night. So
it's funny because like in the summer, I'm an evening person. But I'm really not. Like I hate sleeping in really late. I feel like I wasted the whole day. Even though I'm like, well, I can just stay up later and do it. But then I wake up at like 10 or whatever. And I'm like, ugh. Like that's most of my morning's gone, and it's I don't like staying up really late. But in the summer, it's just kind of what happens because it stays brighter later, and I go out with friends, and normally we're staying out later. Like last night I stayed out really late, which is crazy. I didn't get home till like 2:30, which is shocking because I don't stay out that late, and yeah. I'd much rather get up early though.
Yeah, I find that my body, like, again, as the older I get, it just like needs, like, I get 8 hours of sleep and I'm up. Like as soon as I hit that 8 hour mark, it's like I wake up just on my own, and I'm like, even if it's a weekend, it's like.
Yep.
I'll go to bed at 11:30 and I'm waking up at 7:30 then, you know, because it's that 8 hours. So.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm very similar. Not in the summer. Summer, my sleeping patterns and time stops making sense. I lose track of days. It's summer. I don't care anymore. But yeah, when it comes back to school time for me, definitely I'm like up at 7:30. When I don't have my alarm set, and then whatever time my alarm is set for is when I'm up for then. So it's crazy.
So since you do write fantasy and stuff, and do you create your own world then?
Yeah, I do. It's actually funny. The main fantasy world that I've written for Kingdom Come, it's a whole universe. Like, the land itself is called Alcatore. And it's a super funny story about that. The backstory behind that was when I was, like in junior high or something, or going into junior high, elementary school, something like that, grade 6 or grade 7. I was essentially making a live action role play for my brother that was called Alcatore the Grey Witch, and that was what we did in the summers, and like. I would make, like, for my brother and his friends, and I would make, like, quests for them, and I would send them on, like, quests. I'm like, I'm a princess, and, like, you have to go do a quest for me, and then they go do it, and then as soon as they leave, I'm like, well, I'm the goblin now, and you have to fight me, and, like, you have to hit me this many times for me to actually die, and, like, it was really, really, like, basic, not knowing what live action role play is, but live action role play, and so the name Alcatore of the land came from this witch, I guess, in the thing. I still don't, again, I was not good with plots back then. It was just very, like, snippety stories. And so Galadwin, the mainland in Kingdom Come, is the mainland in Kingdom Come. But there's the first, like, full-length novel I wrote, which was so original, the name was called My Story, because I had no other name for it. Was set in a land that's like to the south of Galadwin.
Okay.
And I might eventually rewrite it, but I've got plans for like other lands in that as like spin-off stories or like their own series and stuff like that. And so like I made that universe for them myself. I guess it was a world. But yeah, that one's my own. Like, there's creatures of my own making in it. Like my bird creatures that are called Fowlin. My half-cat people, which, like, I know a lot of fantasy universes have, like, half-cat people, but I just give them my own names and have their own special characteristics or race characteristics about them. And an orc-like creature called Farron. They're purple. They're purple and have red eyes. Normally red eyes or yellow
like
eyes.
A deep purple or like a
like
very...
a gray purple.
Like a gray... Okay, not like a grape purple.
No, they're not walking out looking like grape people. No, they have like an ashy purple kind of tone to their skin. Okay. And,
so a scarier purple for sure.
Yeah, and they're like giant. Like they're average, like 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
But
Thank you for calling me giant.
I'm okay. I'm like of average height for some of my so like for them 6 feet tall is like shorter average. For them like six and a half is much more normal. Yeah. Yeah. They're also just like built and they're warriors more than anything. They're like yeah. So
nice. So how do you keep all that stuff straight then? Do you write it down, or is this just all floating around in your head?
Some stuff is floating stuff that I haven't had a point to contextualize it yet. Where I'm like, oh, I know that this thing exists, and like this is a thing that I know about this race of creatures that I've made, or this is something that I know about Galadwin, or this is something I know, but I haven't like put it in because it'll just be like just too much information, you know. Because that's a danger about creating your own universes in fantasy novels is you don't want to have this story that's just completely front heavy where you're just like, and I spent 10 chapters world building and then I'm gonna tell the story now. Like there's a danger to that because then it gets boring.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, totally.
So some stuff is just bopping around in my head. Some stuff I jot down places where I'm like, oh, I don't want to forget that like this race has like no magical ability and they're terrified of magic, but like that never comes up so far because we've only seen like one of that race. A good example of that, I guess, was one of my favorite characters in Kingdom Come, who is a race of skin changers. So their race can take on any sort of humanoid figure and look like them and everything, and not like a perfect exact replica, but near enough that you're like, yeah, that's that person that I know, and they're like, oh no, it's not.
So kind of like
someone
Ditto.
Else. Sorry.
It's kind of like Ditto. Do you know what Ditto is?
Yeah.
The Pokemon.
I know what Ditto is, Pokemon.
It can take on exactly the form, but the face is always a Ditto face.
Sort of. I mean, like facially they still look like them, but they might look slightly different. Where if you had like a copy of you and this skin changer side by side, people would be like, yeah, I can figure out which one's the real Cody, but if you weren't side by side, it'd be like, oh, that'd be easier to just mistake that one for you.
Okay.
So like with that race of skin changers, in my brain, they're always Scottish. They're like based on like ancient like Gaelic, and that's the origin of my character Sadir's name is kind of, I took like 2 different Gaelic words and turned it into a name. And essentially the words were like red and something else. But that's not something that like comes up, but also because Scotland is not a place in this book, right? Like it's my own fantasy land, so
yeah.
That's something I have to pay attention to as well is writing stuff that only makes contextual sense in like Earth speak. Like I was writing something when we were on our honeymoon, and I wrote something about like, oh, like that was his second strike or like his third strike or whatever. I'm like, that's a baseball term. Like that doesn't make sense here. So then I have to go and find like a different thing where it's like, oh, it's a black mark against him. That makes more sense. That people still understand what that means, but it's not like a modern sports term that doesn't make sense in this fantasy world.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried my hand at writing like some historical fiction stuff. And like the analogies you use, you're like, so sometimes you randomly throw in an analogy and you're like, that's a completely modern day analogy that wouldn't be like that in the maybe it makes sense if you're just trying to convey the story to the reader, but like in contextual sense it like doesn't make sense.
And it's tricky thinking of those sometimes because we use idioms so often. I'll be like, oh, like I'll address the elephant, and you're like, wait a second, the heck? Like if I'm writing historical fiction, depending on the time, like people don't even know what an elephant is. Like they're what?
And if you're making like a fantasy world where elephants don't exist, then
and I think that like that's kind of the nice thing about the nice but also complicated part about like building a fantasy world sometimes is you can kind of create your own idioms, and you can base them off of real life idioms where you're like, oh, it's the like large whatever blah blah creature in the room, and people will be like, I don't know what that means, but like I know what that idiom would mean in like English, human English. Yeah. So I'm guessing it means about the same thing, and then contextually you'll figure out like, oh yeah, that's a cool idiom that the author has created that applies directly to this specific thing. and I wrote one actually very similar to that in the beginning of the book, because I wanted to write something like, oh, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm like, but that's very much human. Not human, but like earthy.
Yeah.
Our Earth. This realm. This realm of reality.
This reality.
And I was like, okay, well, like, how will I rephrase that? I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna say, like, it's the stone that broke the plow. It's like the plow can drive over so many smaller stones, but then it'll just like break on the one or whatever. I'm like, I don't even know if that makes any sort of sense in sort of farming terms, but
it works for me.
Yeah, that's like I was, so speaking of farming terms and just knowledge that is escaping me, Tori was having me listen to the uncut version of your guys's recording the other day, and I was laughing at the part about like weird research topics on the computer, because oh my god, I've never researched GIMP suits. I don't know why he's getting requests from Wish for GIMP suits. Although the first weirdest one that I ever got was like a fake tongue, and then yeah, like a woman's full leather suit that has a zipper over the butt. And I was like, what?
What is happening?
I don't understand this. And there's like a full set of fake human teeth at one point too. I'm like, why is this coming up for me? There was a point where it was nonstop like wedding and crowns and really nice shoes and corsets and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, that makes sense wedding wise, but like some of the other stuff just was so making no sense. But there have been times though that I'm like, I'm sure that someone is looking at my like search history being like, what the hell? Because I'll look up things like, how far can like a laden horse travel in a day? How many miles? I'm like, how like population breakdowns. And I'd be like, how much of the population is like age breakdowns and like medieval population growth charts and stuff like that. And it's super weird. And I feel like people will look it up and be like, what the hell? Or yeah, like how long can someone survive with like this part of their body chopped off, or like how like stuff that's just like, I would never know this because I never learn it.
Yeah.
But stuff that I'm like, oh man, like I want this to be realistic and legitimate. But one of my favorite authors always says, she's like, there's a point where you have to stop doing the research and you just have to write, because she's a big historical fiction writer, and
yeah.
A lot of her stuff is very fact-based. There's a lot of like legitimate stuff going on in it, but she's like, there's a lot of times where you are spending 90% of your time researching for the book and
you're not
10% writing.
You're
not creating
writing
anything. You're just doing research. And she's like, so there's a point where like, what is the necessary stuff to include and what is just extra information you don't need anymore?
Yeah.
I was like, that's very true. It's very legit.
Actually, I listened to Stephen King has a book. It's just called On Writing.
Okay.
And it's just about him, and it's about the writing process through his eyes.
Yeah.
And he kind of gives advice to like authors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was written like a while ago. I think it was published in like 2000 or something like that. It's still very good. I got the audiobook version, but
yeah. What
he says, at least, is you should just write the story and then the research should come after in like the second write or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, but everybody obviously does it differently, like for some people it's easier to do the research in the moment.
Yeah.
For some people it's not. And
for me it's way easier to do the research in the moment, because a lot of the time I'm like, I don't want to miss something and then go back and then have published something or wrote something and be like, oh shoot, like I wrote this one thing here, but then didn't fix it later on.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, a lot of it has to do with like traveling by horse. So like super strangely, it's actually super. There are two things. Like one was population breakdown of the land, where I want to figure out like, okay, if there's this many people in this land, does that make sense? Like the land is approximately this large. Is that like overpopulated? Also keeping in mind it's kind of like medieval land, so like the population should be smaller, blah blah blah. So like doing a population breakdown and figuring out like exactly like how many people are over the age of like 30 and how many over the age of 40, and like are there people who are over the age of like 60, how many people are boys, how many people are girls, and stuff like that. So that was, I still have it somewhere, and it's like a 4-page document of like just notes that I was taking and writing stuff down where I'm like, breakdown, how many of the population is like human, how much of the population is Farron, how much of the population is this, and all this, and breaking all that down and figuring that out. And then another really long series of like notes and stuff that I wrote down for research was, how far can horses travel on any given day when like burdened with a person, and also like traveling gear and stuff like that, and how far does that look like, and contextually, like how far would that be in real life? So like if I were to ride a horse like from Calgary to Edmonton, how long would that take me if the horse is like whatever? And so yeah, those are like my 2 most extensive notes, and everything else is just kind of, I'll slot it in if I can find it. But yeah.
When you're coming up with the initial ideas and stuff, do you just kind of like get whatever you can onto the page and then you rewrite it, or like how does that work?
Yes and no. It super depends on what I'm doing. So I tend to write out a first draft, like write it out physically.
Yeah.
But and then I'll type it up later and then kind of do a first sort of edit as I do that.
Yeah.
However, sometimes I'll get to a point where I'll write, just kind of get whatever I can on the paper, get like the main big plot points out, and then as I'm writing, I'm like, oh, I didn't explain this enough. I'll add some details and stuff. Sometimes if I catch up to where I've written by hand, I'll just keep typing.
Yeah.
So then it's kind of super crappy, because if I go to write by hand again, I'm like, oh shoot, like the last thing I wrote was the end of chapter 3, and I know that I've typed up to like chapter 5.5.
Yeah.
And so I'll have to go in and see what I typed, and I'm like, oh, okay, I remember where I am, so I'll write from there on. So some of like my original notebooks of like original manuscripts of stuff are very jumpy, and don't make any sort of chronological sense. And so yeah, it's like it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of get whatever you can out. I do tend to rewrite everything though after I finish my first draft. So I guess technically I'll go through 3 to 5 writes of a novel, because I'll do my physical writing, and I will tend to, even if parts are not written and they have been typed up, I will generally write a full novel front to back by hand first, minus some portions that I get just type, and then I'll type that all up, and then I'll read through that and edit it, and then I will start a brand new document and retype everything word for word, because I find that someone had wrote that online, like when I'm seriously doing something for publication, I'll print it off and rewrite it. I'm not going to print it off. Normally I have my tablet in one spot and then my computer in the other. But I see the benefit of that, because you can kind of re-watch the story develop, whereas if you already have it all written, it's tricky, because like your brain sees what's happening next instead of just like word for word what's happening in that moment as you're paying attention to it. So that was probably one of the most helpful tips that I'd seen as a writer. Writing is such a weird one too. Like it's like any sort of art where people can give you tips and that might work for them.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, this is the only successful way to do something. You're like, really? Because someone who's really, really famous for being a really excellent writer did none of those things you suggested.
Yeah.
And it's super contextual, and you never know what's going to take off. You never know what's going to be a hit, and you never know what's going to suck, and you never know what's going to work out for you. So
yeah, no, exactly. You're going to find a way that works for you and just do it that way. If that's what works for you and you're producing the stuff that you want to produce, then just do it that way. Yeah. And like you shouldn't also it's hard when you do love something and you are passionate about something and you do want to make it like go somewhere with it.
Yeah.
It's hard not to compare yourself to the people who have come before you and the things that have worked for them and stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that's why you see those advice and you see that advice and you see those tips in your stuff. You're like, well, if this person did it this way, then I must have to do it this way, and it's
Yeah, and like it's funny because like on Pinterest I bookmarked so many like writing tips that people put online, and one was like a Stephen King thing. It was like, this is Stephen King's like 10 tips to like most successful writing or whatever, and someone just like put it as like point form little infographic. And some of it you'll be like, oh yeah, like that makes sense and I already do that. And some things you're like, I disagree with that. I fundamentally disagree with this one thing that someone's saying. Like the one that I was laughing specifically about like fantasy novels, that one person's like, stop giving your characters these like crazy unpronounceable names. I'm like, no, like if you're building a world, that's like, and you've built this background language and blah blah blah, and that's what works for those characters. Don't mess with that. And it was the same on the same little like infographic like suggestion. It was like, you really don't need italics like ever. I'm like, really? I disagree with that, because like in an audiobook, sure, you can hear when someone's saying like putting emphasis on words, but I'm like, sometimes that little visual clue makes something like sarcastic or humorous,
exactly,
or put some emotion into it. I'm like, yeah, you don't want to overuse your italics, but there's cues that help with it.
Yeah, it's like, that's why italics exist. It's like to get across, it's, this word is different. There's a different emphasis on this word. So why? That's the kind of unique thing about writing, is you're basically trying to convey what is happening in your head, putting it onto a page with all these rules basically that we've all kind of agreed upon, that is language, grammar, punctuation, spelling, stuff like that, and then you're trying to put those words and make the same picture that's happening in your head happen in somebody else's head.
Yeah, it's tricky. There's certain times I'm like, man, I wish I was like a movie director, like a producer or something, where you like make the things visually real, but that's also a lot more expensive.
Yeah, that's another.
More to do.
It's like a completely different kind of skill set too.
Yeah.
It's like you can take like a whole chapter and you can condense it into a visual form into like 2 minutes or something. You know what I mean? Because you don't need to put all that those descriptive words and stuff, and you can just like do this one like smooth scene, and you're like, okay, like.
I love like graphic novels. I think they're incredible because you cut down a lot on the bulk of descriptions, but then you've got like a different aspect. Now you have to draw. You've got to have that artistic style.
Yeah.
So creating is hard.
Yeah, but that just goes for creating literally anything. Painting's hard, music's hard. Anything worth doing is really hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I think it's discouraging to a lot of people, because like, especially in today's day and age, is with Instagram and social media and stuff, you see all these famous people, and you don't see their journey. No. You just see them being good at this thing. Yeah. So you just assume that it's like, oh, they've always just been good at this thing. They were born to do this thing. So I'm never going to be able to do this thing because my stuff right now sucks. Yeah.
It's super crappy. And like, as I follow a lot of artists on Instagram, and I'm like, oh man, like, I've within the past like 2 years, I guess, I've gotten back into, or not back, well, sort of back into, I've gotten into digital art. And I look at some stuff that people create and I'm like, I'm never going to get to that point. I'm like, no, chill out for a second. Like, how long have they been doing this for?
Yeah.
Like, years. So, you're not going to be getting exactly the way they're doing their stuff yet. And, like, also you need to figure out your own style. Like, don't worry about mimicking someone else's. And it's hard, with social media. You don't see the journey a lot of the time. You just see the end results, and people aren't getting that. Like, I see it so much in my students, that they don't, like, there's so much more, I think, anxiety and depression and just pressures on yourself to be this perfect thing, and kids don't realize as much, like, no, there's a process to get there. There's a lot of behind the scenes work going on, but they don't see that. They just see what's going on. And like as an adult, I'm lucky because I know, like I can see and I have the ability to say, okay, I know there's more going on there. And even then, there's still days where I'm like, oh man, like that person's way better than me. Like I wish, and it sucks because me as an adult, I'm able to point that out. And these are kids who they just don't get it yet. So
yeah. It's like even as adults, you have those days where you're like, why am I even trying? Like, look at where this person is. Like, they're so good. And I'm like, why do I even try? And then you're like, oh, yeah, no, I like doing this. This is why I do this. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. You just kind of always have to remember why you're doing the thing you do.
Absolutely.
And the answer should be, at least, is you're doing it because you enjoy doing it.
Absolutely. So, number one reason should be because you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not enjoying the process and you're not enjoying, the journey, basically. Like, it's that whole...
Don't bother.
It's that whole quote about it's not about the destination, it's the journey or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, what advice would you give maybe to young writers then?
The same sort of repetitive advice that I always got, which is like, just don't stop writing. Like, never give up and read a lot. Like, I think that is what helps me a lot, and it's great and it sucks because like reading lots gets me exposed to a lot of really cool stuff, but because I'm reading it sometimes from like a writer's perspective, I'm picking up more so on like, oh, how do you form your sentences, and like, what does your dialogue style look like, and that sort of thing. And I'm sometimes missing out on like more subtle nuances in the text and stuff, and I'll kind of miss more, I guess, surface level stuff because I'm looking at, or I'm missing deeper stuff because I'm looking at surface level stuff like, oh, how do you format things, and how do you describe stuff, and how do you introduce new characters, and how do you have these things happening. So for me, big thing is absolutely suggestion is read lots and pay attention. Write lots. Don't compare yourself with others. You're competing with your past self, I guess. Rewrite stuff. If you're like, I wrote something really, really good, but, like, it's been a few years and it's definitely not as good as I thought it was back then, rewrite it again. Make it better. Because you can only get better. Writing is a hard one because after a certain point, there's no more, like, super distinctive upward progress. Like, there can be, but it's not like when you write when you're little and you can see that you're not writing sentences in complete ways, and you're writing fragments, and you're writing your 3-page long args or whatever. You can see that you've improved since then. But
exactly.
There's certain points where you're like, oh, I wrote a paragraph like 3 months ago, and I wrote a paragraph about the same thing now, and I can see it's better because I've described something better, or I've cut out all like the unnecessary stuff. So I guess just be open for feedback. Find people you trust to give you feedback. We're big on reading and are able to tell you like, hey, this is engaging, this was less engaging, this is interesting, this was less interesting, and stuff like that. But just always write, always read, and always strive to be better than you were a few months ago.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I definitely noticed once I started writing is like when I read books now and I see just like grammatical errors or punctuation errors or spelling errors even, it like takes me completely out of the flow of consciousness that's happening. It's so distracting.
So there aren't like huge grammatical errors in my book, but I was my own editor, right? I'm published independently.
Yeah.
So like I edited my own novel, and as someone who's consumed with it, I don't pick on really little tiny things the way an editor would. So there's been a couple times where Tori's pointing out, he's like, you wrote it instead of is, and I'm like, God damn it. And like it's because Microsoft Word, as I'm using it, isn't going to pick that out because that's a real word.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not grammatically incorrect necessarily in the spot. It's just like it's definitely wrong. And there's a point where I was reading Tori my book on our road trip, and I went to read something that was like, it was a pain in her heart, and I wrote a pain in her head. And I was like, yep, Yep. Perfect.
Yeah, it's funny because no matter how many times you read it, you don't pick up on those things.
Yeah, and then there'll be certain things where like, damn it. Like, I left that part in, or I didn't, I screwed that up. Oh, man. So, yeah, I just resubmitted my first novel for actual publication through an actual publisher, so hopefully they'll be like, yeah, we'll do it. And I'll be like, cool, I need an actual editor then to actually go through this.
Please.
It'll be like my version 2 before I get the sequel out.
Yeah.
So I can make sure it's aces.
Cool. Well, I guess, are there any final things you want to say? And also, plug the shit out of your book and whatever.
So my book is still available on Amazon. It's an ebook for $1 on Amazon Kindle, or you can get it for, I think, $12 US or 16 Canadian. I think with Prime, you get, like, free shipping with it. Well, yeah, you would. It's Prime. But, so it's cheaper if you do it through Prime. Yeah. I don't have too many more tips or last words of wisdom. I'm working on some other stuff. If people want to follow me on social media, it's Writer D Power on Instagram, and I think it's the same, Writer Danica Power on Facebook. That's about it. Yeah.
Cool. And unless you're one of her students listening to this, don't be creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be nice. I don't want... I have a bunch of students already following me on my writer Instagram because it's like it's professional. Okay,
so you can follow her on her writer Instagram.
Anyone can follow my writer Instagram. It's full. It's open. Anyone can follow that. My personal Instagram is private. It's for me and my friends' eyes only.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Well. Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. If you liked this episode of the podcast, why not leave a review? You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. For up-to-date information on the podcast, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us at FrogE Style Productions. That's Frog, the letter E, Style Productions. For more ways to support the show, visit fsproductions.ca.